Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Rogie. I'll talk to you a little bit about how to organize your Behat testing, functional testing. Like they still say in the flyer and on the website, functional testing at VRT. But last week I moved to Media, so to the competition almost to do the same thing. So that's why I wanted to name them both. If I have some tests to show you, I'll do it on the Media websites. From now on. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm Tom Rogie. I started working at Capgemini in January 2014. I'm a big open source and free software and gadget lover. Previously, well, I'm a little bit older than most of you probably. I started working in 2001 at CSC, Computer Science Corporation. They put me in the Microsoft development team that didn't last only for 4 months. After that I moved to Acuna. Acuna was a little tech company in Leuven. There was some guy running around there. He was doing his PhD in a jet compiler in Java. He was also working on some content management system in PHP. Everybody was laughing at him. His name was Drisberg or something. So, well, just a little story. That's where I met him. That's how I got in touch with Drupal. I was in independent work in something completely else, and then in 2014 I went back because, as mentioned, you want to do bigger stuff than what I was doing. So at Capgemini, I was working on the bpost of the E project on bpost International as a developer. And then since May 2014, I was a tester for Drupal backends and Angular frontends. And also since last year, Drupal 8. We've released Radio 2 on Drupal 8. All the other websites are mostly the same backend, the Drupal 7 backend with Angular frontends, also React frontends. So there are lots of different stacks, lots of different environments. And now, since last week, September 2017, I'm at Media to do automated testing. Looks like you don't see the last line on one slide. As you might, and there's well, maybe you should do it like that. As you see, I'm not the best. Presentation maker. I was able to insert an image in my presentation, so I'm already happy. Just one little question to the audience. Are there any testers in the room? Real testers? No. Most of us developers? Developers, okay, yeah, that's good. Then another question, so probably most of us on Drupal 8 already now? Yes. Somebody on 5? I know it is. Who has been writing lots of unit testing in Drupal 8? That's what I was expecting. So probably not integration tests needed. I'll just give a little bit of explanation about those two and where functional testing is situated exactly. So yeah. Unit testing is used for very small individual parts, your functions, your methods, your classes, very small things. They always go very fast. I think Drupal 8 now has like 16,000 or 17,000 unit tests in core. And if you run them on a modern laptop, they finish in around 10-15 minutes, I guess. So they go very fast. One big advantage that you have is that you have no system setup at all. So in fact, everybody should be writing them, just to make sure that what your function is supposed to do actually does. If you have a multiplier function that multiplies to integers, then make some test cases that when you multiply 0 by 4 that you get 0 as a result. All these things, those go very fast. After that, you get integration tests, and integration tests in Drupal 8, which is in Drupal 8, in core, there's the PHP unit module now that replaces simple test from Drupal 7. PHP unit, the layer, the integration tests, what most managers call integration tests, is called in Drupal 8 the kernel testing. Those compare modules working together, components. And so what the kernel test is doing is that you in fact see that different modules are working together. And behind and above that, you have your functional tests. Those are mostly browser testing and JavaScript tests. Browser tests are pure HTML tests, so no JavaScript at all. If you require JavaScript, which of course most of our websites do these days, you will need the JavaScript tests. Now these tests are to test a complete system, a complete functional website. The problem is that they execute very slow, and that you have a very big setup, because it will have to install all your modules. It will have to make the database, fill up the database. Sometimes that can take like 10 or 15 minutes before your system, before your test actually starts to run. And that's why I think that Behat might come as a solution for that heavy system setup. If anybody has any more questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me, of course. You will find more on Drupal 8 testing in the link that is there in Docs 8 testing. They explain very well how to write your unit testing, what classes to extend, and some examples to run them and to. This is very easy to run your tests. Also, in fact, you just need the PHP unit application. You set what directory, what tests you want to run, and they start running. Now, this is not the scope of this presentation. I'm more focused on the functional testing and on the browser and JavaScript and Behat tests. So why do I want to use Behat? Now maybe a little bit explanation on what happened 3 years ago when I started at VRT. There was almost like most of the projects no testing at all. As I'm not 100% a developer, I started researching what we could use to have all those different front ends, the back ends. We still had some legacy Drupal 5. in.be was still on Drupal 5. We wanted to use decoupled Drupal with Angular, so try to find a way to test those Angular websites on devices, on tablets, on mobile devices, and on computers, of course, also. That was a pretty rough search because it wasn't documented very well. Now, why Behat? Why no system setup? The media sites that we had, like VRT News, the new one is not on Drupal, but just as an example, VTM News is on Drupal. They have already lots of articles, lots of text media that you can use in your tests as examples. So if you ever change something on your website, you can still use those older articles, those older videos, to see that they still look like they should look. And that's in fact your regression test, that you can still see, okay, my system is still working like it does. And as you already have that content that was entered there by real editors, we can still use them. We just copy always the database from production to staging to the development environment, and you have it already there, so no more system setup. And Behat extended with good context, and it's very easy to write tests in a business readable language. So even the PO, the project owner, the manager, or even the business people can almost understand what that test is doing. And a third advantage is that it integrates very good with Selenium, Behat, also with the Sauce Labs, so the cloud solutions, Sauce Labs browser stack, so that you can run your tests on different browsers in the cloud. Now, immediately, I'm going to say I don't really like those cloud solutions. I prefer to have a Selenium grid next to me as a tester, to have some devices, an Android, an iPad, an iPhone, and some tablets, and a computer, maybe a laptop on Windows, a Mac, and my Linux machine, to have in fact my own grid, and to choose where I want to run those tests. What's the advantage? Is that I always see, when those tests are running, you always see the pages in front of you. They pop up on the screens, or they start up on the devices, or the browser starts up on the device, and you see all those pages every time, every day, at least 2, 3, or 4 times. And even if a test is running that doesn't really check something on that page, you're going to see immediately up the menu bar is gone. While that test that is running on that moment does not really verify if the menu bar is still there. If you people then say but in browser stack you can have your screenshots if something fails. Yeah, okay, but only when they fail. Or you can have videos that you can see where they're screening. But who was ever looking at videos like that? I mean, I think nobody will do that. So that's just a little side note. I'm not saying they're not doing good stuff, of course. If you have a real problem with one particular version of a browser or one particular device on your website, okay, then you can emulate it on those platforms. Very good to use. So I talked about the business readable language, and that's how tests in Behat are written. It's Gherkin, the Gherkin language. Somebody was using Cucumber before, or heard about Cucumber? No. In fact, that's a fork from that project. Gherkin language is a very easy way to write your tests, static tests. The first part above, on the top of the text file, is just a description, your feature, and most of us we know when they write tickets in order to publish an article on the website. As an editor, I need to be able to write text in my articles. For example, or in order to communicate with potential customers as a site editor, I need to create blog posts. Now that's just some description in the text file. Where the test actually is that in multiple scenarios. And the scenario is always a sequence of given some context, given I'm on the home page, given I am logged in as a user with the administrator role, when I go to the page node add page, and I fill in that is a test in title. When I press the button opslaan, then I should see everything successful. See, what Behat does is translate these steps, so those given when then steps, into actions that he communicates. Behat communicates them with Selenium. Selenium translates that into actions for the browser. You see your Chrome, your Firefox, or Edge browser pop up and do all those things. You can have in one feature file, you can have multiple scenarios. You can have multiple given when then structures. It all depends on the number of steps that you have. Of course, you can extend those contexts. I'll come to that later. I have a little. This came from the Behat website itself. It's an example of a test that you can see there running in Behat, because Behat is not only focused on Drupal. You can use it for almost everything. For example, they use it there to test ls, the ls command in Unix. So in order to see directory structure as a Unix user, I need to be able to list the current directory's contents. And then you can have an example of a scenario, list 2 files in a directory. Given I am in a directory tests, then if you would look into the codes, you would see that the code checks if there's already a directory test. If it's not there, then it executes make dir test. And I have a file named foo. It checks if there's already a file named foo, then it touches it. The same thing. It runs ls, and then it should get that output. If that's successful, if that succeeds, if all the statuses are okay, then my test succeeded. So what's the goal now of Behat? Behat gets extended, and that's where Drupal is the Drupal extension is a context for Behat that knows about Drupal. So it knows how to create users. It knows how to create templates, how to log in certain users. It can do all that for you, and it's under very heavy development still, and it's necessary. So to install and to incorporate Behat into your project. I suppose everybody uses a composer JSON now, so you could use a far file and then use PHP behat.far to do your thing, but I suppose everybody wants to use composer JSON. So you require Behat, the Drupal extension. So that's the context. I'll show you later in the demonstration what that does. The Behat formatter is a reporting tool that I really like to use. It creates an HTML page every time your tests are run, and you see immediately how many tests were successful, how many failed, how many scenarios, how many features succeeded and failed. And you can even see the steps where what steps were failing or succeeding. It even can take screenshots for you, so it's very useful. Behatch, the Behatch context. This one is very useful if you have, for example, an Angular frontend website who does not understand Drupal. I mean, your Angular doesn't have the concept of Drupal. So all those steps like login as a system administrator, that's not necessary. That Behatch context is a context exactly for browsers, so you can say I go to a page, on a page in your Angular website, I click on that link, I fill in that form and I press enter, and then I want to see this and this without any concept of Drupal. The Behatch context also has JSON contexts, REST contexts, XML, debugging system. So with that Behatch context you can fire up other frameworks, JavaScript frameworks for example, to do a more rough testing of Angular. For example, I did it to start up protractor tests. So Angular has its own testing framework, and that framework doesn't know about Drupal. So how do you make an end-to-end test? It's pretty difficult if you make an article and then you want to go check on the Angular website, is it really there? How do you match those two? With that Behatch system, you can fire up extra commands and run that protractor test. And most of the time I prefer to have all my executables in the bin directory of the project. So after that you will have to, so when you run Composer update, Composer install, it will get all the Symfony packages that it requires and install your Behat, and you will have to make a configuration file for Behat YAML. There are three important sections in the configuration file, and that's where I really had a difficult time to know what do I put where, and this is the solution I came up in the end. So the most important sections are the suites, the sessions, and the profiles. Now the suites, they have two different items in there. There are the paths to the files, to the feature files where you're given them scenarios are, and I separate always backend. So those files I divide them in backend tests, an API, and in frontend. In that way, when you have a Drupal backend, you can run the Drupal tests. When you deploy a backend, you can run the backend tests first. After that, check the API, and then it's done in fact, because the front end didn't change. When you deploy a front end, then I just do the inverse. I first run the API tests to see if those APIs, if the API is still the same. And after that, the front end tests with maybe Protractor and other framework tests. Because then it depends what you were deploying, of course. And well, I'll show you later to the front end. If it's an Angular one, it doesn't need the Drupal context of Behat, and the backend, which is Drupal, of course requires it, but he doesn't need, for example, the system context to start up other JavaScript frameworks. And the API one is in fact the most easy one. That one only takes the Behat's JSON and REST, so that you can do your API tests. The suites also need the context to show what you want to do. The sessions, that's one of the most important parts. The sessions define, in fact, the browsers that you want to start up. On what platform, what version. So if you want, you can make it extremely big. You can install machines, virtual machines with all different versions of Firefox, of Chrome, Internet Explorer, Netscape Navigator, who wants to. But I mean, I think most of the time 5 devices is more than enough. I even use most of the time Chrome in emulator mode. So you can start up Chrome in emulator mode, so that you have, for example, a full screen desktop, that you start up Chrome in iPad mode, in an Android, as an Android device. Most of the time you don't have, I lost with good front-enders, you don't have too much problems anymore to run that in Chrome. I was looking okay, so and in those sessions you can also define your connections to the cloud services, to browser stack, and ask browser stack for different browsers or devices. And then the profiles. In the profiles, I only define my my URLs to the different development, staging, or production websites. And there's some more configurations. So this is a little example. If here I define the suites. So Behat is always in the YAML format. So beware of your intended. So you define the suites. This is the at the festival front end, and so my tests for at the festivals front end, they are situated in the JIT project in subdirectory tests front end. And what context am I loading for that particular suite? The Behat Mink context. Mink context is just the class of that context. And here you see the browser and the debugging context of Behatch. If one step fails, that Behatch debug context writes a PNG file in this directory. And so if something was wrong, you can always go find that PNG file and see what your browser was seeing and why your test has failed. Another suite I use is for News VTM API, and here I only load JSON, the JSON context and the REST context of Behatch. Sessions. So sessions, those define the browsers. This is Selenium Chrome desktop. What you see is that I start up a browser Chrome, and I ask for extra capabilities, and namely that I start the browser Chrome in maximized so that it's full screen. Here I start up Chrome in emulator mode, mobile emulation. So it's the same. That's the same thing like you would press F12 and then go to device emulation in Chrome. And you can specify a device name that your Chrome knows about. I usually use Nexus 10. Still have one at home. Good device. And I also for the mobile. So another session is the mobile session. And then it starts up a device named Galaxy S5, which is still common phone. So after the suites, the sessions, there were the profiles, and this is where we define the different base URLs of the test. So if you have a step like given I'm on the home page, it will go exactly to that URL. So for the profile at the festival's local, which is of course on my local machine, it will go to this URL on my local machine. The staging environment then of course is when you do continuous integration and run your tests on Jenkins in the cloud or on your hosting, it will connect to this URL, and the same thing for video news on my local machine. So how do you glue this all together? How do you define what tests are going where? That's done in the Behat in an environmental variable, Behat params. And sorry, I didn't make it up, but having an environmental variable with JSON inside is not really easy to do. But because for example, for this one, the double backslash, I was searching for that one pretty long time. One line of JSON. So what this does is say if you have a default session is good. Good is a pure HTML browser. Most of the time you don't have any more pages without JavaScript. So the most important thing here is the JavaScript session, and this value is exactly the values that I had for my session over here. So if I want to run tests on full screen, I ask Selenium for this session. It will fire up a Chrome in full screen. And then the Behat command itself, this is the config file, what suite you want to use. So for example, if I want to run the backend tests or the front-end tests of at the festivals, I use my suite name here. The profile, of course, if you run at the festivals front end, then you need the profile at the festivals local for my local machine. And if you use any tags in your features, then you put the features here. If you fire that up with Selenium running, then you're going to see your process, and that's what I'm going to try now. Yes, this will be readable for everybody. So the first thing I do is start up my Selenium. That starts good. Where's the other? Ah, there it is. There's still one running. And I fire it up again. So now my Selenium server is up and running. By default, it connects to the port 44. Yeah, here it is. So now Selenium, my local Selenium server is running on 44. I go to my Behat directory. Is that readable there above? I hope so. Let's YAML. I'll just show a little bit that big YAML file. How do I make this bigger? Okay, so we have I have the at the festivals backend. This one loads the Drupal config context. So the Drupal extension knows how to how to import your configuration, even how to set other configuration parameters. The Drupal context itself is to log in, for example, as a user, to test success messages, to test error messages. You can run different drush commands. also run batch processes. The main context is something I will. The main context is very simply I go to a page, node add page, and then your browser will go to that page. It's not really Drupal this, but Drupal Extension extends that main context. It's in fact a different project. And then the Behatch, you see that you can use JSON context and REST context there too. So now I'll have to set my exports. So I will run backend tests before on full Chrome. I mean, you could write your tests that it runs on an iPhone too, but I have never seen a lot of editors who were using their iPhones to write articles on VRTs, for example. And now I'll start up the backend suite on my local machine with the tags desktop, and I'll show that later. And there's a problem already. Oh, it's easy. Did I change something? Let's take a look at this. Ja. Hier. Oh God. Okay. This is better. See, and now you'll see the web page. It will try to log in. Now the login procedure is a little bit strange. It has created a user, and it doesn't find any submit button, so that's an exception. No submit button. Well, we'll want to be the app test.
Made a screenshot of that layer.
Excuse me?
It's made screenshots of that layer as well.
Yeah, but there is exactly no. It's called Almeln. See, that's it's called Almeln, and I probably have it written as Inlogin in my translation. That's something that is not funny if they translate. See, it's what is it? It's called Almeln. Still a lot of turbulence. But now, see, it creates another user, and there's still another element of this book. I know I was writing them for at the festivals, so at the festivals. And at the festivals logo, no scenarios. Now it finds the scenarios, and that's the other login. So
Am I going to find out now?
No, this one works. I was using it yesterday. No. Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's life of a tester. I'll show you that's correct, I think. See, that's the report that was generated. So it failed. That's right. And it was trying to, given I'm logged in as a user with the administrator role. Last night it was working, so I'll have to search up what was the problem. What I wanted to show was that when I go to the node add page, wait for 3 seconds, I fill in the following, because these steps go so fast that you won't be able to follow it. And then at the end you should see the success message. But apparently it didn't succeed. This one should work. That's see, those are pure API tests. So of course, pure API tests, we don't need a browser. What did I do here? I was running 1, 2, 3 scenarios. One was just, okay, given I'm on feed articles, then the response should be in JSON. And if your JSON is well formatted, of course this one will also always succeed. This scenario was run 3 times. Feed articles count, and it checks a JSON schema, which to make sure that your JSON did not change at all with your last updates and so on. If you want to use JUnit XML to import reports into Jira, you can have your tagging with Jira tickets, for example. Now, well, if my tests would have succeeded, demo time, let's pray. Well, I was writing. What are the advantages now of and disadvantages of writing Behat tests? Is that you can write easy tests in a very understandable language. Given I'm logged in as a user with the administrator role, it's pretty easy to understand what it will exactly be doing. It's easy scriptable in a continuous integration environment. So if you want to run these tests on multiple devices, you only have to change. You only have to change that Behat params environment. Set another session. You can have your iPad session and so on, and then run Behat, and then run Behat again. And it's using Selenium, which is pretty much a standard in testing environment. Now, there's also disadvantages, and those are especially the inconsistencies in contexts. For example, the Drupal extension uses the step, I should see a particular CSS element. I mean, if I here I want to see, then you want to really see it visible in the website, but in fact it only checks if it's in the HTML or if it's in the DOM, and that's very, very, very annoying. That's something that I really want to bring up for Drupal extensions. The Behatch context is much more consistent with that. Also elements. So that's in fact as developers, please insert IDs, insert labels into the elements. Because otherwise you cannot easily go to find them in the page and to do some testing on them. Front-enders, themers, they are sometimes hiding links as buttons. So they restyle links as a button or the inverse, and then you use a step, and I want to see, and I should see a link uitloggen, which is probably the problem why I could not log in with administrator. But if you use, I should see a link, then Selenium really goes to look for an anchor tag and not for a button tag. See, and test fails. So then you really have to go up and go and look inside the code, inside the HTML to see if it's correct. And architecture, Behat with Drupal Extension needs to see the Drupal code as it wants to use, as it can inject users' content taxonomy into your database. Of course, it needs the codes of your Drupal, and then it's very difficult in a continuous integration environment to get your reports, to get your statuses and exit statuses of the tests back to Jenkins. That can sometimes be very annoying. I don't know, we still have some time left, a little bit. I was starting later also. I just wanted to give a little bit of a testing strategy example, because I mean testing you can test to the infinite and beyond. That of course nobody has the money or the time to do that. And one of the very important testing strategies for me is the pairwise testing strategy. It says, in fact, that most common bugs in programs are generally triggered by either a single input parameter or an interaction between a pair of parameters. So that means that, in fact, if you only make sure that you have every single combination of two parameters, if you test on that, then statistically, if I remember correctly, statistically seen, you have 94.5% chance to find errors or bugs in your code. So if, for example, you have an object, you have a content type which has an on-off field, which has two other fields with one has possible 3 values, the other one has possibly 4 values, then you have a total of 24 possibilities that you should check. Now you don't have to check them all, in fact with 12 of them is more than enough. There are tools to make all these combinations, and that is just enough to find physical examples of these things. If you test these off, you're almost sure that you got that you will find most of the bugs in your program. If you could say, why don't we take 3 parameters together? Well, then of course you will have much more test scenarios, but you will only have a chance of like 95% to 95%. So is it really worth the effort to make that much more much more time to write your tests? I don't think so. This was done, in fact, this was invented by HP, who were testing a printer driver in the 90s, I think, and they had like, when they saw their printer driver, they had like 3.4 million different possibilities how you could fill in that printer driver. And with this pairwise combination, so imagine 3.4 billion. Okay. If every test takes 1 second, then it would take months or years before they could do the whole their whole test run. With that pairwise testing, you can get to 117 scenarios, and then you get 94%, 94.5% chance to find your errors. So, if you want to write, if you want to write unit testing, try to use this to make all possible combinations for your to find what scenarios you want to test, and I'm sure your code will be much more bug-free than ever before. Sorry about the tests or by the demonstration. If there are any more questions or anything else.
The problem I have with testing is that usually you start with a database, database, and once you have run the test, the database is corrupted.
Yeah, that's what Drupal Extension does that for you, does the cleanup.
Okay.
So Drupal Extension will make a user. All the content that user generates, taxonomy, when it's at the end of the test of the scenario, it deletes that user. It also deletes all the content. So you never have any problem with. Of course, be careful if you do that if you run your tests then on production environments and you make an article that is published on the web, then for like 5 seconds, people might see that. So don't publish it. That's why it's very. I like to use that Drupal extension because it cleans up everything. Yeah.
When configuring Behat, for example, the root driver, I noticed that you usually put a tilde and there is no configuration to that. But when you use like the Selenium, you can find some configuration.
Yeah,
So
in the sessions.
Is there like a list of all the possibilities that driver supports and how do you find them?
You can find a real list on the Selenium API on the website of Selenium. Now they always give examples, but they forget about PHP. Most of the time you will find real Selenium API Java code, and yeah, with a little bit. If you go to look in the Behat code or in the Drupal extension code, you might find how to structure your YAML. That's a problem, I know. Okay, now we really have to. I think there's no more space on the list.